Now, our top story is this baseless and what I feel is a nonsensical impeachment inquiry. It's led by Democrats in the House and launched, of course, against President Trump. You just heard Secretary of State Mike Pompeo saying House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff is running a kangaroo court with these secret committee hearings. Pompeo also said that he hasn't been allowed to have State Department lawyers in the room to hear testimony from State Department officers so they can protect the State Department, ensure that confidential classified information that shouldn't be divulged reasons. He also says that Pelosi pulled the trigger on impeachment before the transcript of Trump's call with Ukrainian President Zelensky was released, or the whistleblower complaint even came out, long before anyone even spoke to the whistleblower or knew that there was contact. And what is all this designed to do? Well, it's designed to bait the president into doing something improper. And Democrats take the White House back in 2020. Now, Ruddy also says that despite all of this, results here at home are looking very good, and the Democrats don't really have a strategy, any policies they can run on to beat President Trump. And I'm pleased to welcome in Newsmax CEO Ruddy. Chris, thanks for taking the time.
Glad to be on, John.
So, Chris, we looked at this last week. We went in pretty deep here. You and I spoke about it. A Pew Research poll that said 54% of Americans wanted the president impeached. But when we dug into those crosstabs in that sample, we found, disturbingly, that Pew had a 14-point Democratic oversample. The 2018 midterm spread was only +8 Democrat. They went +6 above that, designed to elicit a response. I agree with you, Chris. They have no policy positions to run on the Democrats, and it appears they and their media allies are looking for another way to oust Donald Trump from the Oval Office.
Well, what I say, John, on my blog that's on Newsmax right now, so if people want to see it, they can see it today, that the pollsters are hyping this idea that there's support for the president on impeachment. I think it's well under 50%. And when Pew came out with its study, it said 54% of Americans backed impeachment. We started investigating that at Newsmax, and as you know, we discovered that Pew claimed that 56% of the people they surveyed were Democrats. No pollster has 56% of, and it's usually a very close margin to the Republicans. The last congressional election, it was just 44% Democrats voted to 40% Republicans, a 4-point spread, not a 14-point spread. And I think it's really a sign that there's an effort by some in the media and obviously some polling firms to push this issue. And I also go into my blog today. If you look at the Real Clear polling average for the president, he's at a relative high right now, his approval numbers. Rasmussen has him at 47, 48%. The rolling average is at about 43%, which includes a lot of polls that I think skew towards the bottom side of his numbers. But if you look the week before Nancy Pelosi pulled the trigger on this impeachment in September, the president was at 43%. There's really been no movement. The people that oppose the president have long opposed him. So, again, this is a media effort to get the president without, in my evidence of a crime.
Yeah, Chris, when we analyzed it here at Newsmax, we found you were right. There was only about a 3-point spread. We looked at Gallup, Quinnipiac, and Zogby. There was only a 3-point spread between ours and D's. Zogby actually had them even. Their sample was 36% Republican, 36% Democrat. And interestingly, Jeff Lord, longtime political strategist, frequent guest, he told me about a poll in critical central and western Pennsylvania where they polled people of all political persuasions, and impeachment was not a top issue for any, whether they were be Republican, Democrat, Independent.
John, I spoke to the president a couple of weeks ago, and I said to him, look, this to me is political. They had nothing else. It's a year before the election. They had nothing else to stop you. I talk in my article today that Alan Lichtman, a very famous professor, he's predicted every presidential election since 1984. He predicted Trump's win in 2016. He was saying openly on CNN a few months ago that the only way the Democrats could stop Donald Trump next year, the only way they could stop his reelection was to do the impeachment. And that's a political move, not a legal one. And, when they see, like even you were talking earlier about Adam Schiff and quoting Mike Pompeo, why is it even in the Intelligence Committee? There's no intelligence matter that was violated by law. This should have been maybe in the Judiciary Committee. They usually handled it. So you see this thing being run because Schiff has been so vociferous against the president. one of the people leading, this political attack on him. But it really makes no sense. There's no wrongdoing that's been alleged by the intelligence community. One of the whistleblowers happened to be an intelligence member that was assigned to the NSC. So you look at this stuff and what is the actual crime? So the president might have done something where he pressured Ukraine to investigate. He is the chief law enforcement officer of the nation. I don't necessarily agree that the Bidens needed to be investigated. I don't believe people need to be investigated until there's evidence. But I also don't think that the president committed any crime by raising the subject, even if you might argue that it's not a really good political move and it's maybe not smart in terms of look at the political implications it's had for the president. They've been rather negative.
Chris, when we interface with the audience, especially after the show I do on social media, this isn't lost on them. I think the American electorate is very smart these days, due in large part to social media. They look at the history of impeachment. They look at Andrew Johnson. They look at Bill Clinton, Richard Nixon, who he resigned before being impeached. They realized there was procedure and protocol. Like you say, the Judiciary Committee was always the lead committee on this. There was always a floor vote, or in Nixon's case, there was going to be one, but he resigned. Americans see that there's something wrong with the process here. I think this is hurting Democrats. This is blowing back on them.
Look, the night that Donald Trump was elected, there were thousands of people that crowded around Trump Tower. They opposed him before he even breathed after his election. And then there were people calling for his inauguration, at the time of his inauguration, for his impeachment. So this has been a plan and a strategy of the Democrats from the beginning. And it's unfortunate because so much stuff could be done for the good of the country. And they're blocking the progress that this president can deliver on.
Well, it's an economic message, right? It was Bush 41 who said it's the economy, stupid, and Donald Trump delivers economically. That has to terrify Elizabeth Warren, who can't explain how she's going to pay for trillions in proposed policies.
Well, Elizabeth Warren terrifies me. She wants to abolish private health insurance for every American. She should terrify you and all the viewers.
So let's talk about the Senate side now. Obviously, impeachment is carried out in the House. We'll play a clip of South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. He's become one of the president's biggest allies, but he says he hasn't ruled out voting to remove the president from office if he sees evidence of a crime. Let's watch.
Sure. I mean, show me something that is a crime. If you could show me that, Trump actually was engaging in a quid pro quo outside the phone call, that would be very disturbing.
Now, Chris, I think there are some people concerned about Senator Graham's statements, but I think he's saying, I don't see a crime. Show me one. But until then, stop this nonsense.
I agree with Lindsey Graham. I have said publicly that if the President of the United States willfully and flagrantly violated the law, he should be impeached, he should be removed from office. So far, you know that I've known the President for some years. I've never known the man even to hint at breaking the law. He doesn't hang around with people that break the law. He doesn't like people that break the law. It's just ridiculous to even suggest. Now, you could argue about the political wisdom of some of this. The Democrats, if you ask them, in all of this Ukraine stuff, what was the law they broke? And I always ask, I go on other shows on CNN, what law did the president break? They have no law. They just say, well, Constitution, abuse of power. It may very well be an abuse of power, but that should be handled by congressional oversight. They should have public hearings where the public reviews the matter. And then we come to a conclusion if the abuse was so serious that we really need to do impeachment. What they decided to do without hearing from any witnesses, hearing the whistleblower complainer seeing it, even seeing the transcript of the call, they announced an impeachment inquiry, again, because it was political. And you said the economy. I think this is really what it's all about. This economy is the best economy in 30 years. Yale economist Robert Shiller, incredible mind, he's not known as being a Republican. He says Donald Trump is pushing single-handedly defeating the idea of recession because he's such a strong advocate for the economic expansion. And the public has a lot of confidence, the business community and the consumers. The Democrats are a wrecking ball to this. They do not want this to continue. And, you think they'd want to support the idea of economic expansion and low unemployment.
Yeah, you certainly think they would. So what do you think, Chris? Does Nancy Pelosi ultimately do the right thing and hold an open vote on impeachment, or is she going to continue to be driven by that far left faction of the party and allow this inquiry to be carried out in the shadows?
it's incredibly telling that she won't take a vote for just the impeachment inquiry. And this is a pretty easy vote, right? And there's polls that supposedly show over 50%. I think they know that if you minus out California and New York State, you would find that there isn't strong support for this impeachment. There's 30 or 40 Democrats in congressional seats that Donald Trump won in the 2016 election. Those guys have polled their own districts. They know there's no support for this. And they are really worried about the political implications of what they're doing here. So I think it not only puts at risk the whole impeachment, but I think that if they ever do an impeachment vote, and they may be afraid to do it.
I think when you analyze which seats could be in play, those purple districts, they're in those critical states like Ohio, like Pennsylvania, like Michigan, like Florida. This could cost the Democrats the House if Nancy Pelosi goes the wrong way on this.
I'm not concerned, John, with any of the allegations we know. What concerns me is the unknown unknowns that Rumsfeld referred to. Mm-hmm. We don't know what's going to come out of these hearings. We don't know. They're obviously looking for other stuff, and it's the other stuff that they're just so really just totally convulsed with the idea of getting this president. And I think the American people have to look at this and say, what is the goal here? Why are they doing this? And what are the motives of the people behind it? And it's not really good. So far, I haven't seen anything positive that I like.
No, neither have I. Chris Ruddy, Newsmax founder and CEO. Always great to see you, Chris. Thanks.
Good to be with you, John.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for breaking news and give us a thumbs up. If you like this video, then share it with your friends. Remember, you can watch Newsmax TV live on YouTube. Newsmax TV, real news for real people.